Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. Welcome to the future channel for universal peace on YouTube. This is the broadcast Top 10 Proofs ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation? ? So I want to change that into capital letters basically, but that's for next time. First, I will turn this off to facilitate a better broadcast, and then I will go to the article that I've rewritten to comply to YouTube standards, to comply with YouTube, the YouTube policy. Okay, so let's read that first. And basically I have no opinion about it yet. I just want to investigate what other people have written and also do a broadcast about it for a better future, to get control of the factors that control aging instead of fight another world war, third Jesuit world war. Preventing beats curing, to promote universal peace and not spending another trillion on nuclear weapons, but on controlling the factors that control aging. So I disagree with President Trump on the nuclear weapon issue, revising the American nuclear arsenal. And also I think that fake or real trips to Mars are an unnecessary waste of taxpayer spending, that we need control of the factors that control aging now.
Top 10 indications or proofs ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation? ISIS Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation. Did you still think ISIS is radical Islam? Look a bit deeper. ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation. Here at the top 10 proofs or indications, ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation. A fact as clear as the sky is blue. It's a truth as black and white as the colors on their flag. For many alternative news readers, this may be patently obvious, but this article is written for the large majority of people in the world who still have no idea who is really behind the rise of ISIS. No matter which name they go by, ISIS, ISIL, is or Daesh, the group has been deliberately engineered by the US and Israel to achieve certain geopolitical goals. They are a religious, fundamentalist, Sunni terrorist organization created to terrorize and overthrow certain secular or Shiite Arab nations such as Syria and Iraq, but they are not just Islamic. They may be Muslims, and they may be advocating an Islamic state, but they are very much working towards the goals of the Jesuits and Freemasons, depopulating the earth, that want to impose a Satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government upon the people of planet Earth that will be left. It's amazing how many people still struggle to get that point. We have been inundated with propaganda surrounding the fraudulent war on terror, notably terms Islamic terrorism and radical Islam, but more accurate phrases would be Zio-Islamic terrorism and radical Zio-Islam. Secret military agencies such as the CIA and the Mossad pull the strings. Here is a list of the top 10 indications or proofs that ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation. ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 1, ISIS an acronym for Mossad. Let's begin with the obvious. ISIS itself is an acronym, not just for Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, but for Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. This is another way to describe the Mossad, the shady Jesuit-controlled spy agency whose motto is by way of deception, thou shalt do war. In this video, embedded above, the two authors being interviewed, Dan Raviv.
They've changed their slogan. Mossad's slogan has changed. But it used it to be that biblical quote basically.
And Yossi Melman admit that the acronym ISIS equals Mossad. ISIS is a Jesuit, CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 2, ISIS foreknowledge via leaked DIA, the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, is one of 16 U.S. military intelligence agencies. According to a leaked document obtained by Judicial Watch, The DIA wrote on August 12, 2012 that there is the possibility of establishing a declared or undeclared Salafist principality in eastern Syria, Hasaka and Deir, and this is exactly what the supporting powers to the opposition want, in order to isolate the Syrian regime. This was written before ISIS came onto the world stage. Clearly ISIS was no random uprising, but rather a carefully groomed and orchestrated controlled opposition group. The supporting powers to the opposition referred to are Saudi Arabia, Turkey and the GCC nations such as Qatar, who are in turn being supported by the US-UK-Israeli axis in their struggle to overthrow Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. As I outlined in this article, Syrian ground war about to begin, WW 3 inches closer, the US is backing the
So I can advise you all to watch my previous 2 broadcasts on this channel. Let's see if I can bring it back. Oh, I was going to bookmark it. Well, I have to do that now then. So I admit it's an edited article from a more anti-Semitic website that I've edited. I'm going to bookmark this page. The previous 2 broadcasts are: if guilty of chemical attack, Assad should be target, not innocent civilians and military, and missiles aimed at Syrian airbase downed. Assad should be target, not innocent civilians and military. And that's actually in the news right now. So the amount of views is going up as well, slowly but surely. Voila. So now I can always visit my channel very fast. Okay, then we can continue the reading. So I've removed anything that was anti-Semitic, homophobic or racist, and sources are mentioned at the end, so I won't reveal the source of the article for that reason.
Sunni nations, while Russia, China and Iran are backing the Shia nations, so there is a definite potential for this to erupt into World War III. Below are screenshots of the actual DIA document. ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 3, ISIS never attacks Israel. It is more than highly strange and suspicious that ISIS never attacks Israel. It is another indication that ISIS is controlled by Israel. If ISIS were a genuine and independent uprising that was not covertly orchestrated by the US and Israel, why would they not try to attack the Israeli regime, which has attacked almost of all of its Muslim neighbors ever since its inception in 1948. Israel has attacked Egypt, Syria and Lebanon, and of course has decimated Palestine. It has systemically tried to divide and conquer its Arab neighbors. It continually complains of Islamic terrorism, yet, when ISIS comes on the scene as the bloody and barbaric king of Islamic terrorism, it finds no fault with Israel and sees no reason to target a regime which has perpetrated massive injustice against Muslims. This stretches credibility to a snapping point. ISIS and Israel don't attack each other, they help each other. Israel was treating ISIS soldiers and other anti-Assad rebels in its hospitals, mortal enemies or best of friends. ISIS Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Toyota Akbar. ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation, pictured here driving their matching fleet of Toyota trucks. Who's taking the photo? ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 4, Toyota trucks. Where did ISIS get an entire fleet of matching Toyota pickup trucks? Why do so many of its photo shots feature a fleet of matching Toyotas, matching in both model and color? As this information clearinghouse article humorously states, The official story is ISIS stole them from the good terrorists, al-Nusra, who were originally given their cool wheels by the US government, which would seem to beg a couple of inquiries, not least of which is, why are the US giving any terrorists matching fleets of luxury SUVs, and for that matter, how many fleets are we talking about? So, exactly how many trucks did the US supply? Where are ISIS currently garaging this impressive collection, and why do they all have to be Toyotas? Is it a terrorist thing, or simply a US gov preference? Do Toyota mind the brand association, or the fact that so many of the ISIS drive-by photo ops look like perverted car ads? Some of these trucks were actually used vehicles that got sent from the US and Canada over to Syria. This Texan plumber discovered to his horror that his old truck was being used in the war, replete with his business name still on the door. ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 5, ISIS first-class social media skills. The issue of the Toyotas leads us to the next question about ISIS. Who's handling their publicity? How have they managed to get so many photos of Toyota truck drive-bys? How have they managed to master Western social media so well to spread their message, propaganda and threats? How have they managed to produce slick videos depicting fake beheadings? How does a barbaric group of killers, who speak a language very different to English, who espouse fundamentalist, religious ideals, such as Sharia law, and often criticize all things Western, manage to develop such excellent social media skills? ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 6, Israeli group site first to release ISIS footage. Another key giveaway that ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation is that the Israeli group site, Search for International Terrorist Entities, are often the first to find and publicly release the video, as their co-founder Rita Katz has let slip on occasion. Site was involved in the slew of fake green screen ISIS beheadings of 2014. Speaking of fake beheadings, why did this fictional Turkish TV drama show a beheading just like that of ISIS? ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 7, ISIS leader Baghdadi a Mossad agent. Although this indication is hard to confirm, there were reports apparently originating from Edward Snowden that the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was actually an Israeli Mossad agent by the name of Simon Elliott or Elliot Shimon. Simon Elliott Shimon, aka al-Baghdadi, was born of 2 Jewish parents and is a Mossad agent. We offer below 3 translations that want to assert that the Caliph al-Baghdadi is a full Mossad agent and that he was born Jewish father and mother. The real name of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is Simon Elliott. The so-called Elliot was recruited by the Israeli Mossad and was trained in espionage and psychological warfare against Arab and Islamic societies. This information was attributed to Edward Snowden. Bashar Assad, President of Syria. The US has been actively plotting strategies to destabilize and overthrow his government. ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 8, leaked cables showing US plotting Syrian overthrow. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks did a great job in capturing information about what was happening in Syria years before the Arab Springs and current war started in 2011. He reveals how William Roebuck, then charged affairs at the US Embassy in Damascus, was plotting to destabilize the Syrian government. The following quotes from Roebuck's cables to Washington show how he was outlining the vulnerabilities of Assad. Vulnerability. The alliance with Tehran. Bashar is walking a fine line in his increasingly strong relations with Iran, seeking necessary support while not completely alienating Syria's moderate Sunni Arab neighbors by being perceived as aiding Persian and fundamentalist Shia interests. Bashar's decision to not attend the Talabani, Ahmadinejad summit in Tehran following FM Moalem's trip to Iraq can be seen as a manifestation of Bashar's sensitivity to the Arab optic on his Iranian alliance. Possible action. Play on Sunni fears of Iranian influence. There are fears in Syria that the Iranians are active in both Shia proselytizing and conversion of, mostly poor, Sunnis, though often exaggerated, Such fears reflect an element of the Sunni community in Syria that is increasingly upset by and focused on the spread of Iranian influence in their country through activities ranging from mosque construction to business. Both the local Egyptian and Saudi missions here, as well as prominent Syrian Sunni religious leaders, are giving increasing attention to the matter, and we should coordinate more closely with their governments on ways to better publicize and focus regional attention on the issue. ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 9, Russia bombs ISIS, US protects ISIS. Before Russia militarily entered Syria, the US claims it was attacking ISIS, yet Russia was able to do in a few months what the US has been unable to do for years. Why? Is the US military that incompetent, or this is further proof that the US has been funding and supporting ISIS all this time? At one point there were even reports that US soldiers were told not to fire on ISIS targets, even if they had a clear view of them, as this Free Beacon article reports. US military pilots who have returned from the fight against the Islamic State in Iraq are confirming that they were blocked from dropping 75% of their ordnance on terror targets because they could not get clearance to launch a strike, according to a leading member of Congress. Why did U.S. State Department spokesman Mark Toner struggle to celebrate the fact that ISIS had lost Palmyra recently? ISIS is a Jesuit CIA or Mossad creation. Indication, proof number 10, ISIS always the excuse for further intervention. Finally, consider this: why is ISIS always the perfect excuse for further military intervention in Syria? Given the history of foreign meddling in Syria, particularly by the US and Israel in the last 70 years, isn't it rather convenient that the specter of ISIS is the justification offered for proposed no-fly zones, airstrikes and ground troops? How would the US and Israel conquer the Middle East without their pet Frankenstein ISIS? Share this article with those who haven't yet awoken to the truth about ISIS. Many have already seen through the propaganda. Once enough of us do, the usefulness of this ridiculous, dangerous and vaudevillian terrorist group will expire, and maybe a critical mass of people will pull back the curtain and, for once, get a glimpse of the true puppet masters. Want the latest commentary and analysis on conspiracy, national health, sovereignty, consciousness and more? Sign up for free blog updates. Makia Freeman is the editor of Alternative News, independent media site The Freedom Articles and senior researcher at toolsforfreedom.com. Facebook here, writing on many aspects of truth and freedom, from exposing aspects of the worldwide conspiracy to suggesting solutions for how humanity can create a new system of peace and abundance. Sources: https://www.youtube.com/watch v equals jonixczk http://judicialwatch.org .liveleak.com Informationclearinghouse.info.
Other sources are blogs, Spectator Co.uk, pri.org, activistpost.com, wikileaks.org, YouTube again, freebeacon.com, and that's about it. So if you Google CIA supplied ISIS with weapons, trucks, then you find, for example, BusinessInsider.com article: ISIS may have obtained anti-tank missiles from the CIA. And there are lots of sources that claim that weapons were supplied to them to destabilize the country, a technique they've used in many countries. In my previous broadcast I've covered General Wesley Clark. He claimed that they want permanent bases in these 7 countries in the Middle East, and basically it may be blood for cancer oil what they're after is more power. These Jesuits and Masons posing as innocent Christians, So what do you all think? The Jesuits, Masons, or Mossad? Or the CIA? Exclusive tracing ISIS weapons supply chain back to the US. Wired.com, December 12, 2017. Some healing frequencies. Militaryfactory.com, weapons of ISIS. So where do they get their weapons? Is a question.
Weapons of ISIS, Islamic State infantry weapons, vehicles and artillery formed from a collection of ragtag forces. ISIS went on to make considerable gains in both Iraq and Syria before a coalition forced its retreat. ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, also Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant equals ISIL, took regional military observers and governments by surprise when it worked its way from individual terrorist groups into a single, effective fighting force. From there, the group went.
So I do not necessarily agree with what was said in the article that was read out. I'm still researching this stuff basically for fun, to find out who's really behind ISIS and stuff, because with Syria that's also mentioned again.
On to capture swaths of territory throughout Iraq and Syria, attempting to recreate an Islamic kingdom with old world ideals. Iraqi and Syrian government forces initially accomplished little to stem the tide, and this was worsened by the vacuum left by American forces having left Iraq. While ISIS lacked any sort of traditional air power, it laid claim to stocks Iraqi on Soviet, Chinese, and American-originated equipment. The result was a ragtag group of fighters with an equally ragtag collection of weapons offering tactical flexibility against better organized foes. Despite coalition airstrikes against positions and money-making sources, ISIS remained a threat to the stability of the region, with its war against the West threatening to pull even more players into it before the end. In 2017, the tide turned and Syrian and Iraqi forces, heavily backed by foreign coalition sponsors, forced the enemy on the retreat, leaving remaining ISIS components to resort to a whole new level of desperation: human shields, mass executions.
Visit universalpeace.jimdo.com 999 per logic 999.blog2blog.nl universecreator.weebly.com.torna.wordpress.com for universal peace.
universalpeace.jimdo.com
universalpeace.jimdo.com universalpeace.jimdo.com
Flag images indicative of country of origin. The entries displayed below have been compiled by way of identification from available ISIS-related imagery. Video: 1980 Flag of the United States. Thumbnail picture of the M1 Abrams main battle tank. M1 Abrams main battle tank. One or two of these more modern combat tanks are believed to have been captured from the Iraqi army by ISIS. 1979 Flag of Germany. Thumbnail picture of the German Leopard 2 main battle tank. Leopard 2 main battle tank. Again, one or two of these modern tanks are believed to have been captured, though from Turkey and Syria, by ISIS. 1972 Flag of the Soviet Union. Thumbnail picture of the Soviet T-72 main battle tank. T-72.
So the Americans supposedly killed 1 million Iraqi people in the depleted uranium war crime, etc. With these depleted uranium children. Horrible atrocities. And then we are supposed to believe that these civilians just steal these tanks and stuff. Well, then I will get one too.
Main battle tank. Its mass availability in the region means that at least a few of these steel beasts have been taken on by ISIS forces. 1961 Flag of the Soviet Union. Thumbnail picture of the Soviet T-62 main battle tank. T-62 main battle tank, an evolved form of the earlier classic T-54/T-55 Soviet MBT series. The T-62 found its
Study war no more. So the cost of war makes clear, costofwar.com, how much is spent on these wars. And of course you could argue spending any money on it is too much already. We need universal peace, not controlled wars to depopulate the earth that the Committee of 300 stands for. So, globalresearch.ca claims the CIA supplied ISIS weapons. Reminds me of the A-Team. Control the position, David Icke. So control the position usually mixes the truth with obvious lies. For example, the lie that the earth is flat and about shape-shifting reptilians. To label all people that tell the truth about these matters as insane conspiracy theorists. So that is why it matters that I'm a conspiracy factist, I'm a truth teller. So that may not be the same as a truist or truther. Well, the Toyota pickup trucks does not prove that it was supplied by the Americans, or doesn't prove anything in and of itself, I guess. But they certainly don't look cheap. So who financed them? Where did they get them? And can they still buy supplies wherever they like? Just as civilians or whatever. And should we support ISIS after the Mediterranean war crime? Or is it two wrongs don't make a right? War is always a crime. And if you do good and save people, then you're a man. If you kill people, your fellow humans, then you are a criminal, to say the least. A murderer. But they might think war is an excuse to go around killing people. And the Jesuits and Masons are never targets, always innocent civilians. So then we have to click on the pictures. The first one it's showing is about Putin's massive assets. The US spend more on war than all other countries combined, spend less than the US. It was covered in this broadcast or a previous one as well. Thousands of Toyota pickups received by ... US shoots itself in the foot by accidentally arming ISIS. Oh, then it's supposedly done accidentally. So I don't believe anything I read. And if you have any evidence that proves it one way or another, please contact me on Skype, prologic999, I'm live. People can ask me questions, you can be live in this broadcast. So no racism, homophobia, nor anti-Semitism is allowed. So first I can make the callers promise that they will refrain from these things in the broadcast. Words can be like weapons. Weapons that kill warmongers. Politically. So mentioning universal peace more, I think, is a good idea. So how with the American presence can they capture these Iraqi army vehicles? when the Iraqi army officials cannot protect them themselves. US government supplied ISIS InfoWars, control the position. The archetype of control the position with their Jesuit buddies. New York Times reported Texas plumber sues car dealer after his truck ends up on Syria's front lines. Any publicity is good publicity, they say. It's clear in many cases they're American-made weapons. ISIS boasts US-made Humvee bar spoils. So one idea is they supply them with these weapons to destabilize their country and to depopulate the earth. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments or Skype. Also let other people think about it. Let them know about this so they can think about it. And please like and subscribe and spread the information that must be spread for a better future for humanity. Daily Mail UK reports Vicky Huddleston says France paid the ransoms to free French hostages and that the money ended up in the hands of the same Al-Qaeda militants the country is fighting now. $17 million. US deliveries of weapons and military equipment. Okay, let's read this then.
U.S. deliveries of weapons and military equipment for terrorists in Syria by Anna Jonder Global Research, November 02th 2017. Region, Middle East and North Africa. Theme, Terrorism, U.S. NATO War Agenda In-Depth Report, Syria. Print. 60. 270. 88. Inside Syria Media Center continues publishing some evidence of the U.S. made weapons supply to ISIS and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly Jabhat al-Nusra, terrorists in Syria. According to Syrian General Ali al-Ali, the United States illegally delivered at least 1,500 trucks with military equipment and weapons for terrorists in Syria between June 5 and September 15 this year. The general reported that all Washington statements regarding this military equipment was intended for the U.S. allies were false. Ultimately, the weapons almost always come into the hands of terrorists. In support of his words, Ali al-Ali analyzed some NATO weapons captured by the Syrian army from ISIS and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham army depots. The Austrian Glock 19 pistol especially is among the most popular weapons. In 2014, ISIS released footage, where terrorists executed several
1,500 trucks is quite a number.
hostages using such kind of pistols. Later, it turned out that the pistols were delivered to the Iraqi law enforcement agencies by the U.S. in 2003 to 2004. The U.S. made M16 assault rifle has become a symbol of terrorists in Syria. The Syrian Arab Army, SAE, has repeatedly found military equipment stamped property of U.S. Govt. This fact confirms that ISIS and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham terrorists use the U.S. made M16 rifles, not unlicensed Chinese copies. The Belgian FN-FAL assault rifle that earlier became standard rifle ammunition for member states of NATO is often found in ISIS weapons deports. This 7.62 x 51 mm NATO battle rifle equipped with sniper scope is used to conduct aimed fire and neutralize enemies' manpower during military operations in urban conditions. Besides, the German Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine gun used by the US and European law enforcement agencies is also popular among ISIS fighters. All data of this.
Well, I think the amount of weapons that they are using, I think it's unlikely that they were all retrieved from military that they've subverted or killed from American soldiers. Perhaps that's even impossible, basically, if you look at the war machine, the American war machine, and the depleted uranium war crime, etc. But okay, let's read on.
Weapon supplies is strongly classified, and there isn't such kind of information in any open sources. Probably, the existence of these weapons, including highly specialized MP5K, as well as the unceasing weapons landing, is directly linked to military operations of the U.S.-led international coalition in Syria and Iraq. Against this background, it also should be mentioned about ISIS weapons depot in Al-Mayadeen. The Sahai Command announced that ISIS terrorists had used a huge arsenal of M16 and FN-FAL assault rifles, U.S. made machine guns, AA mounts, grenade launchers, and even British 155mm howitzer. Besides, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi admitted that the U.S. made M2A1 heavy machine gun also fell into the hands of terrorists. This weapon is usually installed on Humvee vehicles. We remind that the Iraqi army lost about 2,500 of these armored vehicles only in Mosul. In fact, terrorists from all over the Middle East prefer to use weapons delivered from the U.S. Their interest is easy to be explained. The U.S. weapons are often delivered in circumvention of international law, so it is easier to get it. According to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, data, the United States is an absolute leader in the number of signed contracts regarding weapons supply over the past 5 years. In this regard, Syrians strongly oppose arms dealers, who continue to be enriched by killing civilians. Syrian enemies are politicians who have unprecedented profits from indiscriminate weapon trade. They force Syrians to fight against one another in the senseless fratricidal war, squashing the government forces and armed opposition. Continuing to profit from the war, the US and European weapons lobby earns millions of dollars by delivering weapons to different unstable regions. Entire corporations are working to create new ways for legal weapons supply. They have learned to make money on human lives even during World War II, and successfully continue these traditions nowadays. That's why only 13 congressmen voted for the law that prevents weapons supply to terrorists, 2% of the US House of Representatives. It's simply not profitable for the US and European politicians. Anna Jonger is a freelance journalist at Inside Syria Media Center where this article was originally published. Featured image is from Zero Hedge. The original source of this article is Global Research Copyright Anna Jonger, Global Research, 2017. According to Syrian General Ali al-Ali, the United States illegally delivered at least 1,500 trucks with military equipment and weapons for terrorists in Syria between June 5 and September 15 this year. The general reported that all Washington's statements regarding this military equipment was intended for the U.S. allies were false. globalresearch.ca
So I do not believe that anything we read is necessarily true on any of the website, whether it's mainstream media or social media or anything else. You can see it as serious research or entertainment. Does it matter?
No longer satisfied with crude roadside bombs, ISIS is doing something unprecedented for a jihadist group, designing and mass-producing its own advanced munitions. Photographs by Andrea Di Cinzo, author, Brian Kastner. Security. December 12, 2017. 6 o'clock a.m. Exclusive, tracing ISIS weapons supply chain. Back to the U.S. Share 9892. Tweet, comment, email, Habibi, aluminium. The call echoes through the courtyard of a trash-strewn home in Tal Afar, a remote outpost in northern Iraq. It is late September and still hot, the kind of heat that seems to come from all sides, even radiate up from the ground, and the city is empty except for and young men with guns. Habibi. Damien Spleeters shouts again, using the casual Arabic term of endearment to call out for Haider al-Hakim, his Iraqi translator and partner on the ground. Spleeters is a field investigator for conflict armament research, CAR, an international funded by the European Union that documents weapons trafficking in war zones. He is 31 years old, with a 1980s Freddie Mercury mustache and tattoos covering thin arms that tan quickly in the desert sun. In another context, he'd be mistaken for a hipster barista, not an investigator who has spent the past 3 years tracking down rocket-propelled grenades in Syria, AK-47 style rifles in Mali, and hundreds of other weapons that have found their way into war zones, sometimes in violation of international arms agreements. The work Spleeters does is typically undertaken by secretive government offices, such as the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency's Military Material Identification Division, known as Chuckwagon. But while Chuckwagon is barely discoverable by Google, Spleeters' detailed reports for CAR are both publicly available online and contain more useful information than any classified intelligence I ever received when I was commanding a bomb disposal unit for the U.S. military in Iraq in 2006. In that fight, guerrillas ambushed American soldiers with IEDs. The devices I saw during my tours were largely hidden in the ground or deployed as massive car bombs, detonated in marketplaces and schools so that the gutters filled with blood. But the majority of those devices were crude, held together with duct tape and goopy solder. The few rockets and mortars the fighters possessed were old and shoddy, lacked the correct fuses, and often failed to detonate. Many of ISIS leaders were veterans of that insurgency, but as they began ramping up their war against the Iraqi government in 2014, they knew they needed more than IEDs and AK-47s to seize territory and create their independent Islamic State. A conventional war required conventional arms, mortars, rockets, grenades, which, as an international pariah, ISIS could not buy in sufficient quantities. Some they looted from the Iraqi or Syrian governments, but when those ran out they did something that no terrorist group has ever done before and that they continue to do today: design their own munitions and mass-produce them using advanced manufacturing techniques. Iraq's oil fields provided the industrial base, tool and die sets.
Well, I'm only trying to find out at the moment who supplied the 1500 Toyota trucks to ISIS. Toyota is not mentioned. Why ISIS uses Toyota trucks? So they write 1,500 trucks, and here we see $1,500 appear in the article. So a neural network that controls the human mind may be at work also. And if they're all brain controlled, then it is possible to fool all the people.